Hello lovelies, Lesley, not quite enough face paint I'm going to go with. Hope everyone's okay. Thanks for all the messages, thanks for all the comments. As you can see, I'm about to go drumming. Nearly didn't go, the day had a difficult start, but decided to go. I'm not going to hang around for the fireworks, partly because of the length of time I'll be leaving the dog. But yeah, I'll be coming away relatively early, so I'll be doing the procession, but hopefully we'll slip away before we get to the actual bonfire. Our costumes for bonfire processions are a bit different. So in the summer, you know, you have the big floaty skirts and dresses, and some of our folks have long wigs, and it's all a bit flappy and floaty. Not a good idea in bonfire season, because these are live flames. These are torches. They get dropped on the ground, so it's a good idea not to have things that are highly flammable and flapping around a bit. So I've got plain black trousers. This is sort of somewhere between a short dress and a long top, and I've got the tailcoat that I made out of an old work jacket, sort of blazer style jacket, where I cut the fronts off, sewed them onto the back. So the only thing I do have, which is still a bit flappy and floaty, is the net on my hat. Because you got to. You absolutely got to. But as with all drumming this time of year, it's really all about the lights. The drum is lit, the jacket is lit, the hat is lit. And I mean this lit in the traditional sense of the word, but maybe I'm not. Maybe I do mean it in the more modern usage as well. I will put footage at the end. Cheers. I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to read something that I've written. I wrote this on Sunday morning and recorded it then, and it didn't come across well, put it that way. Yeah, it will make sense as I start reading, so I hope you'll bear with me. I'd like to take a few moments to pay tribute to someone, a person many of you will know, who has sadly left us. Yesterday I said that the day had started badly. That's because Jude had let the folks in our knitting group know that his mum, the stranded elf, had died. Naturally, we were all incredibly saddened, having grown to know and love the elf over quite a few years. She and Jude used to come to our knitting group, and the elf continued to do so once Jude moved away. She also joined us online when COVID meant that we couldn't meet in person. Many of you know the elf thanks to her appearance on Jude's podcast. Having read the comments on social media, it's clear that people held her in very high affection. In real life, she was exactly the same as she was on YouTube. When the elf and Jude were at knit night together, it was the same as you saw on the podcast, that same humour and that same lovely mix of affection and respect between them. But the elf was valued by us in her own right, not just as Jude's mum or the sender of parcels. Here are just a few personal impressions. She was a warm, funny human who had great kindness, not to the point where she'd be taken advantage of. The elf was no fool, but she had an open heart and didn't judge anyone. She tried to understand people and their behaviour. In her non-stranded work, the elf also helped others and was generous with her time and her care. And she thought of other people. The elf sent me a message for my birthday the week before last, wanting to wish me well despite all that she was going through. She liked to do things properly. Jude often used to talk about how good a cook his mum was, how she liked to dry washing on the line rather than in a dryer, how she and his dad brought him up to be kind and considerate. The elf always did things well, didn't judge others, although she was very self-critical. When it came to her craft, the elf would often talk down her work, despite the fact she produced some beautiful things. Complicated patterns weren't to her taste. She liked to make crochet blankets from repeated squares or would knit the body of a boxy and then hand it over for the shaping and the sleeves. But her work was always neat and carefully done, always with her own standards in mind. And then she discovered weaving and developed such a talent for it. Last Christmas I was genuinely thrilled to have the elf as the person who picked me for Secret Santa. I have one of her hand towels. The elf was quick to point out a mistake, but I think it's beautiful, and it's something I will use and treasure. She was also very funny. The honesty came through in her humour. Never cruel, but never shying away from the truth. The elf always made us laugh, made us think, made us glad to know her. So yesterday was an incredibly sad day. I tried to do a gratitude practice when I go to bed, and last night I found it hard to feel gratitude in the face of such an unfair and sad situation. And then I thought of the obvious. I'm very grateful to have known the elf, to have learned from her, to have spent time with her, to have laughed with her. The sadness is hard, and it will continue to be so, but I welcome the mourning process, even with tears and sorrow, because I'm lucky to have known someone that it hurts so much to lose. Now there are many who knew her so much better. Jude and his dad, of course, as well as the friends that the elf had, long-standing friends that she made the effort to spend time with. She'd go away on holidays, have weekends with them. But I'm lucky to have been in a circle of people who knew her, and for that I will always be grateful. These are just a few early thoughts. No doubt the elf will be on my mind a lot over the time to come. The people we care about never quite leave us. There will always be things that spark memories. Now those things can be big or small, and there are usually lots of them. And one thing that I absolutely know is that I will think of the elf when I write my Christmas cards. On Jude's Vlogmas a few years ago, he recorded his mum writing her cards, and they were laughing because the elf had a hierarchy of cards. Those people she didn't like got the not so nice cards, the less expensive ones, the ones with the boring pictures. That year she gave me a rubbish card, making reference to the Vlogmas, knowing that it would make me laugh, which of course it did. I hope that's why she gave me a rubbish card. So when I write my Christmas cards, and I'm working out which ones to send to which people, I'll think of the elf and smile, remembering her system, knowing that it's something that many of us do, but not many admit to. I'll think of her often, I'm sure, and I can guarantee that I will think of her as I go on to take that, as I go to take on that particular task, this and every year. I'm really going to miss her. Hello, lovelies. Bonfire. We should talk about that. The weather was on our side largely. I say this because it was quite mild, and it stayed dry mostly. We had a few spots of rain, but not too bad. However, it was very windy. So this meant that plans were made to make things safer, because as I said earlier, we are talking about live torches. I've got a link below to a video that someone in the crowd took and put up on YouTube, so thank you to them. There's commentary in a language I don't understand. I hope it's not rude. I think it is just commentary. Apologies if anything inappropriate is said, like who are those strange people banging drums. So yes, these things are always a bit stop-start. So there is a lot of sort of standing around. But it went pretty well. I think it was quite a long procession, but as we were at the front of it, I didn't really see what was behind. And partly I ducked out early. I was conscious that the dog had been left on her own. Was also aware that if there are fireworks, depending on the wind direction, you can possibly hear them from our house, even though we're not that close to where the fireworks were going off. So I'd left a radio on, so there was background noise at home for the dog, but I wanted to get home so that she wasn't on her own if we then heard bangs and crashes. She's pretty okay with fireworks when they are going off. She's normally fine, but I just would rather be here and know that she's okay rather than be elsewhere concerned that she's not. So I ducked out of the parade. We'd done an hour and a half, and as we got to the end of a street, normally we turn right to go to where the bonfire is, but I was at the back of the group and suddenly everyone went left, and I thought, I'm not going left. I'm going home. The other reason being that because we're the lead drum group, we drum everyone else into the fire site. So the area's barricaded off so that most of the public aren't near the bonfire, but people who've been taking part in the parade are inside the barriers. And we normally split ourselves into two, line the route, and then drum people as they go in. That can take half an hour. And as I say, I wanted to get home. Now, as it turned out, the bonfire was lit, but the fireworks won't let off because it was so windy. There were concerns about safety, so they didn't happen. There were some fireworks going off, but not the official display. In amongst the groups, the bonfire groups, there are people who just let off fireworks, bangers, goodness knows what else. And members of the public do as well. You can't odds it. It's just, you know, people like to do these things. What we think of these people is up to us. But the official fireworks didn't happen. So, as it turned out, Madam would have been okay. But I'd kind of had enough, and the dog had already been on her own for a while, so I didn't want to leave her too late. And it's one of those things that if you're then on the fire site, it can be quite hard to get off because there are people, sort of security guards, stopping people coming in, so it's quite well barricaded. I mean, obviously, if there was an emergency, they could lift the barricades and get the emergency services in, but it's not a free-flowing area. And I thought, my choice is either to go now or to be here for another hour and a half. And I didn't want to leave the dog for that long, so I came home and put my feet up. So yeah, it was good fun. It was a good crowd. Because it's one of our home events, there's normally a very good crowd. And people seem to enjoy themselves. So I haven't got a huge amount of footage, I'm afraid. Because some of the torches weren't lit, again, because of the weather considerations, there's not a lot. So I've lifted a few photos from other people's Facebook pages. Thank you. And I'll put them in here rather than footage at the end. Cheers. Hello, lovelies. This has turned into a super, super busy week for work. So I don't have a lot of stuff to record, although I do have a finished object. And actually it's quite big. Oh, hello, what have we got here? Oh gosh, that was very strange. Right, sorry, easily distracted. So most of this I finished over the weekend. I started it last week. The speed with which it's finished is a sign of how quick these things are to make, but don't tell anyone. Let them think it takes ages. Because I started last week with a strip of knitted fabric that I'd made on my Addy King size, my whirly whirly machine, and I have finished the blanket. It's quite subtle for me, quite subtle. I'm going to have to stand up to show you. So it's about, roughly about 6 feet square. I mean, that's not an exact measurement. Don't run your chair over it, Lesley. And, fluff, sorry. One edge is a bit wonky. because despite the fact that I can record the number of rows on the AliExpress and I made the same number of rows, I mattress stitched it together, so you are working excuse me, sorry, kind of, you know, 2 rows, 2 rows, 2 rows, 2 rows, so you are keeping things lined up in terms of row numbers. I still seem to have some differing lengths. I am not going to worry about that. When you sew these pieces together, you don't finish off one edge, and in theory you can work out the length of all, unpick the rest down to that level, join them on. Yeah, I wasn't going to do that. I did that on one of the panels because it was quite a bit longer, but on the rest it's just a little bit uneven. I'd just like to remind anyone that it's a blanket. It's going to lay over someone to keep them warm whilst they're sitting on their sofa. So if they're going to worry about an inch difference in a column, one to the next, this really is the last thing I'm going to make for them. I suspect, you know, it might bring them some amusement and, oh, that's interesting. But essentially, it's done. So I need to, I've washed it. This is all made from the cones that I picked up from my friend's aunt's house. Showed you that a few weeks ago. I was going to do all the columns, you know, all the panels in the same colour. Didn't have quite enough on brand. So we've got a bit of a fade going on because this had 2 of what we call colour 1 and 1 of colour 2 all held together. Then we had colours 1, 2 and 3 all together. Then we had, I think, 1, 2 and 4. Then we had 2, 3 and 4, and then back again the other way. So it's kind of slightly faded, kind of, but not quite. So just to show you that again, I will record all about it for the month end podcast. And that's that done. So I will post it off to my sister-in-law next week. I'll have to try and vacuum seal it, I think, so get it into a parcel because it is quite chunky. But I hope that she likes it. I hope that it keeps her warm, which is the main objective. And yeah, pleased to have got that done. Just throwing things on the floor here. So I'm going to call that it for this week. Like I say, work has been super busy, so the next day or two I'm just going to be head down on the computer, not sleeping, hopefully, I haven't got time, and doing lots of writing up. So going to get on with that. Thank you for being here this month. Apologies. No, I'm not going to apologise for my tribute. I'm going to say thank you for listening to it. Yeah, thank you. Have a good week. I am going out and about next week, so there will be hopefully travels and footage to show you. Take good care, everyone. Thank you for all the comments and thoughts, and I will see you next week. Thanks for being here. Take good care. Keep safe. Keep well. Look after yourselves. Cheers. Bye-bye.